Hello and welcome to Behind the Lines. I'm Diane Dayton. Today we're going to talk about inspired education. And with us right now is an inspiring teacher. Her name is Elizabeth Raff. She's a 6th grade teacher at Penn Manor. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You do so many wonderful things in your classroom because you get your students actively engaged, motivated, and involved. But this didn't start out that way when you first started teaching 6 years ago, right?
You're right.
Where were you then at that time?
I started teaching in North Philadelphia near Temple University after I graduated from college. And I fell in love with the kids, I fell in love with the community there. And the first year of teaching can be very daunting. It's an overwhelming thing. I think if you're a first year teacher, you got to give yourself a lot of grace because there's a lot of things that are coming at you from left and right. And I had to learn very quickly that in order to keep my students' attention, I needed to keep on doing things that were different. If I had a lot of behavior problems, I realized that what I was doing in the classroom wasn't working. It wasn't necessarily them acting out, it was what was I doing in the environment to create something that was engaging for them. And that's when I started to I realized that I needed to start changing things up. I started to need to bring in music and rap and dancing and movement to really start to bring these students into the classroom and keep them there and interested in what we were doing.
And I think you talk about it being culturally relevant, is that right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, students, when they walk into a classroom, they already feel like they are not engaged because it's something that they have to do. It's somewhere they have to go. And I always talk about with teachers that if you have to go to a faculty meeting or if you have to go to a certain place, you're less motivated to want to participate in it. So students already are forced to go somewhere where they don't always want to be there. And so we have to work even harder to be creative and thoughtful and want them to have this idea that they are needed here. And so coming up with examples and lessons that really bring them in, suck them in, and are culturally relevant to their experience is essential.
Well, you started out teaching 4th grade,
Yes.
but when you moved back to Lancaster, where you're originally from, you had this opportunity to teach 6th grade at Penn Manor. That was a
Yes.
little daunting at first, right?
6th grade was not something that I was looking forward to at all. There are hormones that are raging during this time. There's a lot of different attitudes that are adjusting, and transitioning into middle school is a really daunting task. But after a couple of days in 6th grade, I realized there's nowhere else I need to be. This is where I am called to be in 6th grade because they're starting to be really critical about the world around them. They're questioning who they are, topics about like news events, they're coming in and wanting to talk about even more. And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity to help them grow and to shape them as they move and transition into middle school.
That's wonderful. We talk about foundational relationships, and that's where motivation starts. How do you do that?
Oh, definitely. There's a famous saying that kids do not learn from teachers that they do not like, which is kind of a big statement, right? It's a lot of pressure on teachers. But it's extremely important that there is a foundation of relationships in the classroom because no learning is going to occur. So a simple way that I do that in my classroom is to establish a secret handshake with every single student that I have. And I teach 2 different sections, so I have about 50 different handshakes that I have to learn from the beginning of the school year. And they love that. They love the idea that there's something unique just between the 2 of us. There's something that I get to expect every single day from my teacher. It's a moment where I look them in the eye, I greet them, I say good morning, I thank them for being here. And it also, at the same time, helps me with any students that had a hard time the day before. It's a blank slate. If they had a hard time, if they were acting up, we had a bit of a rough day, I can come in and they come in, we do that secret handshake, and it kind of lets them know, all right, we're going back to basic and we're going to be having a good day today.
Yeah, like everything's cool, we're
Yes,
all right.
exactly.
Yeah, we're here together.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So it's an active learning environment. What helps to keep them on their toes and focus? Because if we look at some of the things that you do in class, I mean, you even teach from on top of chairs or tables, right?
Yes, if you walk into my classroom, you will typically see me teaching on top of a desk, on top of a chair, doing something that's different. A lot of times my students are rapping to the content that they're currently learning about. They'll be up on their chairs. We also use a lot of motion, so I think movement is incredible. I can't imagine just sitting at a desk all day, and having these students sit at a desk all day, I can't even fathom what that feels like. So they're constantly moving, they're constantly up. We have motions for vocabulary. Students are teaching other students all the time. It's a very active learning environment. So I really think that an active body is an active mind. And if they're just sitting still, they're just doing everything that has to be a certain way, there's not going to be any passion that's in there as well.
Well, and speaking of passion, you certainly have passion for what you do.
Oh, thank you.
And I think you said earlier when we were offset, it doesn't even always feel like a job.
It doesn't. I get to go into a classroom every day and get to be creative. I love to be creative and to do different things each day with my students and get to see learning just physically brought to life. And I think that's what's lacking right now from a lot of classrooms in our nation in education, is that that passion is being lost because teachers are kind of being brought through the ringer a lot. But we have to remember why we want to be here from the beginning.
You also share information with other teachers from your website, is that correct?
Yes, so social media has been an amazing part of my own professional development, my own professional learning. And I have a classroom Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook account where my students share what's happening in our classroom, and we connect with other classrooms around the world, which is amazing. We Skype with them, we get to connect. But I also use it as a resource for other teachers as well. So people can come to those social media accounts and also my website that has a ton of materials, resources, strategies that they can start putting into their own classrooms as well.
You have an Alice in Wonderland theme.
Yes, I do. I had this idea that, you know, I want to have a physically engaging environment, but also when my students look at the walls, they need to have an idea that, ooh, I'm in a new space, a creative space that is bringing learning to life. And I love Alice in Wonderland. I'm a reading teacher, and so I thought it was the perfect theme for the idea of just stepping into a new world. So I reached out to the Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, and I got to work with some painters and educators, or that wanted to be educators, and they just completely transformed my classroom to look like Alice in Wonderland, which is fabulous.
Wow,
Yes.
that's great. Is there anybody else in the district in that level doing what you're doing?
Things are starting to catch on very quickly. So I'm running a lot of professional development in my district and different workshops and other places around the area. And people are starting to kind of grasp onto this idea. It's almost like they've been waiting for something as a refreshing movement to bring into the classroom. And so I'm having a lot of teachers asking me about what I'm doing, wanting to know those types of things. And more teachers are starting to utilize those strategies as well.
That's great. The Youth TED Talks you've
Yes.
been involved with. Tell me that.
That was an amazing experience. I had the opportunity to be part of the curation committee, which was just being able to choose which speakers we wanted to speak at this event. But in the end, I was also able to be the MC for the event. And it was kind of like a culmination of having students being able to be empowered on a stage. And that's definitely what my philosophy is. Like our children are our future, but they're also our now. They're doing incredible things right now in our communities, and to be able to promote that in our Lancaster community was incredible.
That's wonderful. What I like what you do in the classroom, so it sounds to me, is that you really kind of level the playing field in that the students help each other.
Oh, definitely.
And that really increases their learning, their engagement, their participation, and the way that you connect with them, the relevancy.
Yes, I'm definitely more of a guide than the one who has all the information. And I think a lot of the times in education in the past, teachers were almost like gatekeepers of information. But really, students come with so much knowledge that I don't even know. And so having them be part of that learning community and having them know that they're contributing to this process is really an incredible experience.
Tell me about the energy in the room.
Oh, it's very palpable. Like anytime, unfortunately, I can be a little noisy. So if you walk down the hallway, you know it's my classroom because there's like loud rap music playing,
right,
or we're clapping and doing those types of things. But when my students walk in the door, I usually have a lot of positive music playing. There's a beat, there's an energy, because if they walk into my classroom in the morning, just kind of sluggish, and we kind of start our day, that's how our whole day is going to be, that kind of slow pace. But if I show up with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm, enthusiasm is contagious. And so if I'm modeling that, no matter what I'm teaching, they are going to also show that enthusiasm as well.
Wow, you're setting the tone and you're framing the experience when they come in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, boy, that is so much fun. And I think that's the word that I think everybody even uses for your class. It's a fun class, right?
It is. It really is. And there can be fun and hard work at the same time. And that's a huge piece of it, is that engagement can be fun, but if teachers are only working on that engagement piece and only having fun, then we're wasting our time.
Right.
Because we also want to make sure that we're having high expectations for our students and really making them work hard and push them to higher levels. And so that piece kind of comes hand in hand with high expectations and at the same time engagement.
So you have the student engagement with the academic rigor.
Exactly.
And one of the ways you do that is through the Spy Lab. And with that, we're going to take a brief pause. When we come back, find out about the Spy Lab. Stay with us. Welcome back to Behind the Lines. We're talking about inspired education with 6th grade teacher Elizabeth Raff at Penn Manor. You have your students so involved every lesson that you do. And one of the ways is through what you call a Spy Lab.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So it's almost the epitome of my philosophy on education, that when you have high expectations and you have incredible engagement, beautiful things can really happen. And so what I try to do is set a really high bar for my students. We are working on a skill that has to do with summarizing nonfiction texts, and that can be very challenging for students, especially nonfiction. And I found an article, an actual book about real spies throughout history in different wars, and I thought, well, this seems like an interesting topic to teach this skill. But I also found that, unfortunately, it was an 8th grade level text, and I knew that would be a very big challenge for my 6th grade level students and some that are below 6th grade level as well. And so I thought I had to come up with some type of environment that really sucked them in and engrossed them, that made them want to work hard, because I knew it would be a really hard lesson at the same time. And so what I did is to create a completely new classroom environment, and I created a Spy Lab. And so when students walked in the morning, the doors were shut. There was blackout papers on all the walls. They had no idea what was inside the classroom. And I've made signs that said US Spy Lab. I dressed up like a spy, had like a suit on and everything like that. I had my name, like 007 or something like that. And inside the classroom, there were pieces of white string hung from all different directions and black lights. And so with the lights out, it looked like laser beams that were coming from all different directions. I had Mission Impossible music playing in the background, and I had all these different spy files ready to go around the classroom. And when they walked in, they were hooked. They were just in awe. And what was great is that 6th graders normally don't play pretend, but they played pretend. Like, they really felt like they were spies, and they acted like it the entire day. So they gave themselves different names, they tried out different ways of talking, like they were official spies. And I also gave them a scenario. So I told them that the US spy files were hacked. Someone hacked our files in the United States, and it was up to them to read this article, to highlight the most important information, and summarize it in a new spy profile for the US government. And that was utilizing the skill of summarizing important information and reading a nonfiction text at the same time. It was an incredible experience. The students worked harder than I've ever seen before. And in an 8th grade level text, my 6th graders were so engrossed in what they were doing. They worked hard, they worked together collaboratively, and it was really an amazing experience. At the end of our day, which was a lot of hours of really hard work, they actually applauded, which was amazing. I've never had that happen, especially 6th graders.
Wow.
They just stopped, they organized themselves, applauded, and thanked me for that opportunity to work hard, which was amazing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, students applauding their teacher for
Yeah,
this experience.
you never get that, and that was amazing.
That is amazing.
Yes.
And they learned.
They did. They really did. They learned much more than I would ever expect them to do, and I think it's all in our expectations as well. If I thought that I was just going to give them this piece of paper and summarize it at their desk, many of them would probably throw it on the floor, walk out the classroom, or just get really frustrated with me. But I had to create an environment that was creative, that was interesting, that was enticing, and kind of set it up as a scenario that really brought them into this kind of pretend world, which was amazing.
Yeah, they wanted to be a part of it.
Oh, they did.
They wanted to be there.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's the key. You had a great experience, I believe, last year. You went to the Ron Clark Academy. That's in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes. The Ron Clark Academy is a private middle school, 5th grade through 8th grade, but it's also a teacher training facility. So it's a place where thousands of educators, superintendents, principals have come to not only observe what they're doing, but also attend workshops and understand strategies that they can bring back to their own schools as well. And it was incredible not only to witness what was happening in those classrooms, but also to work with the other educators that were there and learn from each other and what we could utilize in our classrooms.
We talk about what 55, I guess there they called it rules, but
Yes.
you've changed it to
55 challenges instead. So one of the things that I loved about the school was that they had very high expectations. They had a very active learning environment like my classroom, but they also had high expectations. And Ron Clark wrote The Essential 55, which is a book actually, but they have 55 rules they have to follow. And I thought these are great rules. These are awesome ideas to bring into the classroom, but I knew that if I told my students from the beginning of the school year that they had 55 rules they had to follow, they'd be done. They'd walk out. And so I changed it instead to challenges, because just the wording instead really brings a motivation to it. If it's a challenge, they're going to want to succeed. They're going to want to try to beat that challenge as well. So these are challenges that range from so many different things, simple things like turning your homework in on time or staying organized, opening the door for somebody, saying thank you. But there's also another aspect to it that I thought was even more interesting, and that was soft skills. And soft skills are something that we don't necessarily teach in the classroom. It's not something that's part of my curriculum, it's not something that I'm required to do, but it's something that's so important in our workplace in order for students to be successful getting into college, getting a job interview, and those are things that I felt I have to be teaching my students.
That makes sense. And soft skills are important just in life, period.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about some of those soft skills that you try to implement.
Yes, so I teach my students exactly how to have a firm handshake when they meet somebody. So we practice shaking hands all the time, how to maintain eye contact, how to talk in complete sentences. In my classroom, if a student does not speak in a complete sentence, we have a motion that all the students go like this, and that means that they have to stop and rephrase and say it instead in a complete sentence. And they love catching each other, but it also really works because then they talk eloquently, they can speak clearly, and it's a wonderful soft skill to have. Another one would also just be able to maintain a conversation. So I put them in different scenarios sometimes to say, like, okay, you're meeting a CEO of a business. What are you going to say? And these are things that sixth graders normally don't have to deal with.
Right.
But I want to put the pressure on them, and I want them I want to have those high expectations so that when they move forward in life, they're going to already have that as a toolbox for themselves.
You gave them an amazing experience with the amazing shake and a luncheon.
Yes, and so I've been teaching them all these soft skills for a while, and I finally was able to test them on it with an amazing shake. And so we took all of those soft skills and had a wonderful opportunity to attend a luncheon at a country club that was local in Lancaster. And that was an amazing experience. Their eyes were so wide walking into that place. And they had their napkins. They had to figure out where those would go, where their silverware was going to go, how to pass the food, how to push their chairs in, keep their elbows off the table, all those types of things. I actually sat in between two of my sixth grade boys, and every time I had to get up, they would help me up out of my seat and push my chair in for me and ask if I wanted more water, and it was amazing. They were just incredible students. I mean, they always are, but to see them showcase these soft skills was incredible.
I bet all the other people were impressed too.
Yes, and we shook hands with all the waiters that we had and thanked them for their time and for their generosity, and I think they really loved that experience at the same time.
That's great. You are so passionate about what you're doing, and you're passionate not only about training within the classroom itself, but training other teachers and teaching.
I think that teachers get a bad rap, unfortunately. There's a lot of things that are coming at us all the time. But if we have those moments of inspiration, those moments of creativity, that we can really start to transform our classrooms and feel like we're making an impact, those are the things that really are essential to our classrooms. And a lot of the times, teachers have a lot of pressure on themselves to be perfect. And we're in an education world where things have to be a certain way, they have to get a certain grade, and we have a lot of pressure on ourselves as teachers as well. And I see that a lot in the social media world and how teachers share what they're doing. But I try to tell teachers that it's not about being perfect. No one's perfect. No one's going to always have everything together. We make mistakes. But it's always important to be different. It's important to always try things that are different for your students, to make things in a little bit different of a way so that it can impact your classroom in a positive way.
Some of the things, if we were to just pull out some of the nuggets, what would you say, I guess, connection, relationship?
Relationships are extremely key for the foundation of your classroom.
What else?
So I would say engagement, making sure that you're an active learning environment, high expectations. And the thing about high expectations is that they're a lot of work to maintain. You can set a really high expectation for your students, but as soon as you kind of falter and wiggle down from that expectation, it's just going to fall apart. But it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of work to be able to maintain that expectation. However, if you do, it's going to be a wonderful, well-oiled machine.
And it's like you said, students will meet any expectation you set for them if you maintain a high expectation.
Exactly.
They will succeed.
They will.
And you know that to be true.
Exactly. I think that a lot of times we dumb down what we expect from students. We just think it's easier to do it that way, or we're just going to meet everybody if we like teach the lowest student. However, I think we need to teach the highest student in our classroom and maintain that expectation for all students. Because if we do that, they will rise.
They will rise.
They really will.
Yeah, and you're proof of that.
Thank you.
I get so excited, I almost want to go back to school, you know,
Oh,
and have an
you.
environment like this. I think this is just wonderful. We're going to take a brief pause. When we come back, we're going to have some final thoughts. Stay with us. We've been talking about inspired education with sixth grade teacher Elizabeth Raff. You were saying that you encourage educators to think outside the box, have high expectation for their students, create a passionate learning environment that extends beyond the four walls of their classroom.
Oh, definitely. I think if you start with yourself and maintain that enthusiasm, the rest of your students are going to follow. Always take each day as a new day. Always think outside the box. What can I do differently today to bring my students into that learning environment that will impact them in a positive way?
And when they do that too, they're doing a lot for themselves as a teacher too. I mean, there's an excitement that is spread between teacher and students.
Oh, definitely. They feed my energy and I feed their energy, and it's a continuous cycle. And it's important that students are coming to school wanting to be there, because if we have students that are coming to school and they just don't want to be there, learning is not going to take place. Meaningful learning is not going to take place.
Right. So it's an active environment, an active engagement. They're not passive recipients.
Not at all. They're constantly moving, constantly grooving, and they know that they are there to work when they walk in the door, but they want to be there to work.
And if we see a teacher on top of a desk, well, that's kind of cool.
That's okay. Think outside the box. Do something that's different. And let me tell you, when I get on top of that desk, they are like, okay, we're ready. What's going to happen next? And that's the way to be.
That is the way to be. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for
all
having
that you
me.
do. Thank you for joining us today too. I'm Diane Dayton with Behind the Lines, reminding you to look behind the lines. You might be surprised what you find.